Does that appear to have started recording for you? Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the TAG contributor oh, come on. Strategy. Thank you so much. TAG Contributor Strategy Mentorship Working Group. This is our first official meeting since being approved by the CNCF TOC. And as a part of the CNCF, this meeting is covered by the CNCF Code of Conduct. So we are recording. This will get put onto the cloud and handed off to be put onto YouTube and whatnot. But thank you all for coming. Sorry for the confusion on the Zoom link. We'll get that sorted for the next one. And it looks like we have a couple of items on our agenda. Seeing as we are just starting, I'd like to invite Jay to start the introductions.
Kia ora, Nate. Thank you for that. Yeah, as mentioned, my name's Jay. You might notice I've put on the agenda there a word that most of you probably aren't too familiar with, whanaungatanga. And I'm just going to drop a definition of that. It's a Māori word, and the thing is about a lot of Māori words, they don't necessarily have a literal translation, but it's the best sort of effect. It's something that's very common in Māori culture. I'm from Aotearoa, New Zealand originally, and whanaungatanga is really important, I think, especially because this is the first mentoring group meeting that we've had to establish sense of understanding of one another, who's in the room, who we're working with. It's very customary in New Zealand to spend a little bit of time doing that before any sort of businesses is taken. Sometimes in some cultures, some iwi or tribes, process can take hours, regardless of where they're dealing with, council or government, or regardless of anyone's sort of, status or anything. It's really important to establish that sense of understanding about who's who in the room, so the work can continue, I guess, on a more positive sort of note and stronger note moving forward. So on that note, I just want to take that time to formally introduce myself. Ko Ruahine te maunga, ko Rangitike te awa, ko Kura Haupo te waka, ko Ngāti Apa te iwi, ko Ngāti Kauai te hapu, ko Pare Wānui te marae, no Whanganui ahau, ko Jay Tihima Tuku Ingoa. And what that basically means is customary for many Māori. We don't just talk about ourselves or our jobs or anything like that. We talk about our ancestral links to our mountain or our river, or our tribe, or our tūranga waiwai, or where our people originate from. And for many Māori, that's really customary to get an understanding before any of those other sorts of details. And so, just wanted to share that with you. I don't expect everyone to go into that level of detail or anything, and we won't necessarily do that every time we meet. But I thought, for me, coming into the space, most of my background is not technology at all. My work is in career and youth and community development, and I've been working in the space for about 4 months now, and it's been quite difficult for me to sort of know where I sort of fit in. A lot of it, so I'm straight to the business side of it. I met with a lot of people several times in different meetings, and still don't know in some cases who exactly I'm talking to. And I think one of the key things for anyone who's seen the mentoring charter is that we're talking about how can we increase the quality of our mentoring projects and the diversity of the participants who take part in them. So I think that's something that in terms of how we essentially best look after our people, it's something really key that I think would be awesome to focus on going forward. So thank you for that, and if anyone would like to follow next, that would be awesome. Kia ora.
I suppose I'll go next. Hello, everyone. My name is Nate Waddington. I am Canadian living in Vancouver, British Columbia on the West Coast here. I have previously been in another life a coder, I've been a designer, I've been a writer, I've wanted to be an academic, and in that time, I was fortunate to help teach courses and whatnot, and really gained a love for trying to help folks figure stuff out. And I hope to bring some of that to our endeavor here. So I work for the Linux Foundation as a developer advocate for the CNCF. And in that role, I help folks organize and write their documentation, help projects do that, as well as for the last 6 months, have been helping to run the CNCF mentorship program since Ihor has unfortunately had to step away due to the circumstances in the Ukraine. So I did want to sort of bring up Ihor, thank him if he's ever watching this. I want to thank him so much for everything he's been able to do to get me to this point. And yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Shall we pick a next? Let's see, Natalie, have you got, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm just recovering my voice, everyone, so apologies. I'll make this short. Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Blatko. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a senior software engineering manager at a company called Wayfair. I lead the open source team, and I work alongside a team that looks after a project called Tremor, which is a CNCF sandbox project that has immensely benefited from the Linux mentorship program, Linux Foundation mentorship program. We've had 13 graduates in our project, which is awesome. And so I have a selfish reason for wanting to take part, but on top of that, wanting to always improve the conditions and the general process for folks who are learning and getting into tech, given that my own path was not so straightforward. I have an academic background in Egyptology and archaeology, so this career is absolutely plan B for me. So I'm located in Berlin in Germany, so there may be some meetings I miss given that it's a bit late for me over here. But I'm originally from Croatia, having spent also some time in Australia. That's me.
Awesome, thank you.
Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it. Rian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Perfect pronunciation. Yes, I'm Rian. I'm with the II team. I'm from South Africa. So Natalie, I feel your hour of the day. It's also late here. With the II team, we work on various projects across the CNCF, and supporting Jay is one of the functions. See how we can help him to build things in New Zealand amongst people that's not in tech. Myself, coming from the last 15 years out of the automotive industry, project management there, and now project management in tech, which is a total new ball game, total different people. So yeah, very interesting. So also not native to these things, but yeah, it can be done. Enjoying being here, and I'll throw it over to Josh.
Thank you. I think Hippie has got his mouth full. So Josh, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, I'm Josh Burkus. I'm co-chair of Tag Contributor Strategy. I work at Red Hat and live in the US in Oregon.
And lastly, but not least, Mr. Hippie Hacker.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hippie. I work with a group of consultants, mostly out of New Zealand. Rian was on his way here before COVID started, and we've not let him in yet, but soon and very soon. One of the reasons I came to New Zealand was to see what the benefits of working in open source ways and getting communities into open source could have on neighborhoods and nations. And I'll just drop a link here. We've been working with Maori for a while to learn from how they mentor each other and the cultural norms that they have that may be a little bit lost to stuff as we get super technical and into all the things. And the words in Tereo, which is the language of the Maori that he spoke earlier, were called a pepiha. And the link that I just shared with you is a Maori woman by the name of Indigo Phillips. We flew her to China to speak about whakapapa, which is the identity within Maori culture, where they go and meet together. And there are some things for us to learn, like when walking into a space and giving our history of here is everything, where my mountain and where my river and where my identity is from, that pepiha. But there's a distinctly Maori furtherance of that's called the whakapapa, and that goes back to the boat or the canoe that first arrived in New Zealand, and then all the descendants off of that. And just speaking that allows them to have connection and relationship, because they have probably some overlap with each other. So I encourage you to go listen to Indigo kind of speak to that, and then my futile attempts to try to integrate that into API Snoop and some of our basically integrating a call trace, a stack trace into everything we do for our calls. So we're looking at a particular API call, the Kubernetes API server, actually getting to tell the client binary all the way through all the best people to talk to. We have the most commits to the functions that were called there, because we do all have deep connection through the code and what we run with each other. And so I think there's some beautiful things to be learned and mentored through. And II, if you didn't know, the whole reason it's II is about mentorship and pairing. So there's two I's, and that's where two or more people gathering together, working on stuff and capturing the beautiful output of that. So I'm Hippie, and I'm so glad to be in the room.
Kia ora e hoa. Thank you. Awesome, Nate. Thank you for that.
Thank you, everyone. So glad to see you all here. Just going to through the agenda here. Term 3, November through September, is now accepting project proposals, which is great. My apologies, I set the announcement out a touch late, so I've extended the timeline to Friday the 12th, and I'm going to be the one who's going to be sort of doing the data entry. So I've only hopefully inconvenienced myself in that particular motion. I'm hoping to automate some of the emails and announcements moving forward. I think that might be an easier way of dealing with these types of things. But we do have a couple of tweets here and a couple of days left. So if you're able to retweet and help amplify, we've got, I think, 3 or 4 projects now. These tend to get proposed sort of near the ends. I'm expecting quite a few to come in on Thursday and Friday of this week. So I'm not too concerned that we've only got 2 or 3 at this point. But if we can send out friendly reminders, that's always helpful. Natalie?
You had mentioned, Nate, that you had already extended the deadline. So I'm asking on behalf of some folks at Wayfair, there's no other extension taking place. The 12th is the final day. Is that correct?
As of right now, the 12th is the date for cutting off project proposals from projects. So that'll be 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That being said, this is our own project. This is our own program. So if I've historically been quite flexible in that date. So if somebody comes in and says, oh, I've got this idea for a project on even up to the next, probably, definitely on the weekend, and even if it's like Monday or Tuesday, I would normally still accept a project concept, because the next deadline is the Menti applications, and that goes through the 15th through the 24th. So even if they come in, let's say on the 16th, we're still giving the better part of 2 weeks for folks to see it. So that's not something I generally publicize. I guess the cat's out of the bag now. And I'm not sure that that has been good practice. I don't know that that's necessarily been always helpful, but I want to err on the side of more project proposals than cutting that off early. So right now the deadline appears to be firm, but if something comes up, then I'm happy. This time though, the only issue is I am going on vacation. Going to the next sort of agenda point. I'm going to be on vacation for starting on Monday for the next 2 weeks afterwards. So I actually won't be at the next meeting that we have scheduled for this group. But I have made sure that the schedule for the mentee applications that closes after I'm back, basically. So we will be there will be time. Is it right after I'm back? At any rate, I'll be around to so the applications are open until the 24th at 5 p.m. And then starting on the 25th through the 1st is when we would do the paperwork, send out offer sheets and such like that, and get the mentees into the system, both for payment and getting them set up with like Expensify and what they need to get paid and all that sort of stuff. So I've worked that in so that it's actually starting on the 25th, which I'll be back by. Or I'll be back in and around there, so it should work out. I'm not anticipating my time off to affect us in what we're doing here, and I will be around. I'm not going anywhere where there's not going to be any internet access or anything like that. So, depending on how much, depending on how many. Proposals get given to us, I might request a little bit of help in the. I'll probably actually we brought on somebody at the CNCF named Uche, and he's probably going to be able to help with some of the data entry. Josh will probably be able to vouch. Some of the data entry around this program is quite slow, and so. We might need some help just even getting everything in based on the process. And so I'll be teaching him that process. And I would probably invite Jay, I would invite you to follow through that process with me as a co-chair, just because I'm not sure. So let's actually maybe go into a little bit of the history of the LFX mentorship program platform. It was built to help sort of manage these things at the Linux Foundation level, and when Ihor had to step away, the system was set up such that there could only be one sort of administrative account for our work. And unfortunately that meant I couldn't help him do any of the data entry. So what we did is set up a shared account that CNCF folk have access to, which can help us to sort of input that type of data a little bit more quickly and set it up so that we can have a group working on it rather than one person. Thank you, Rian. I appreciate that. And so the way the system works is the administrator puts all the descriptions in. So everything that gets pulled in as a PR to the CNCF mentoring repo, we copy and paste into the system as the sort of owner of that project. Then we add the mentors. That way, the folks who want to apply to it can see the description and who's mentoring the program. Once we open that program for applications, then people who have joined the platform can do the application. And once the application period is closed, then what we do is we ask the mentors to make a choice, submit that to the administrators via Google form. And what that allows us to do then is, as the mentorship admins group, choose and make formal the applicants' hiring, essentially. At which point we would then send out all of the paperwork to the mentee. Now I just sort of ran through that. Does anybody have any questions about the platform or why we do that?
Sorry, I was taking some notes and I missed something real quick, but I'll chip into that a bit more later when we catch up. So thank you.
Okay, so that all being said, the program is open, and so while we are still supporting the current summer semester, the term 3, November through September, is in the planning and production phase, I suppose. So now we're moving past the items that I added. So whomever put the next item on the list, I'm happy to hand the baton.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I dropped a couple of things in there. First one there just touched on is past mentee and mentor engagement. So Uche Basu, who mentioned before, he and I managed to catch up a couple of nights ago, which is awesome. Yeah, awesome, passionate individual. Lots of good learning for me about his experience and some of the things that he wants to do going forward. One of the ideas that he proposed was a graduate ceremony for mentees at the conclusion of the program, which I think has enormous value. We also bounced a few ideas about perhaps increasing the engagement of that. One of the ideas at the table was sort of like monthly meetups and you know, how those might sort of be managed. So I took a bunch of notes, which I still have to put into a HackMD or anything like that. But I guess it was just something open that will be developed going forward. If anyone has any ideas about how that can best be put together. Basically, the purpose of that will be to build a bit more of a sense of connection and community between mentees. There's a couple of things that was sort of raised about, yeah, I guess areas for improvement to increase overall sort of success and engagement in the program. And it was around more than you know, technical and coding stuff around yeah, helping to navigate different barriers, you know, increasing, you know, productivity and investment in the project, just helping to gain a better understanding of, again, who's who in the room. And yeah, same sort of thing as applying to mentors as well. It has been sort of spoke about in the past recently about perhaps putting together a mentor survey, which we'll be working on in the coming weeks, putting some of that sort of stuff together. But the same sort of deal, wants to sort of identify any sort of areas for opportunity, how we can obviously encourage more mentors into the space, and if there's any sort of you know, key learnings from those experiences that we can use to develop the quality of the program initiative overall. So yeah, it's a bit of an update on that. Does anyone have anything else I want to add as far as engaging past mentees or mentors?
Josh,
I wanted to ask, there's actually sort of two distinct bodies here. And I want to keep that in mind. One is the mentees and the mentors specifically for LFX.
Yeah.
And the second is the mentees and mentors from CNCF projects, regardless of which mentorship program it is.
Cool.
And those are kind of separate, at least in terms of reaching them, right? Because for the LFX ones, we pretty much at least have all of the contact information. That's not necessarily true for GSOC and Outreachy.
Yeah, I have I have contact information for the last GSOC, and I believe the last Google summer or the season of docs as well. So I can get some of that, but I don't have a great history of that yet. So we can, but I completely agree. There's two sort of, there's the mentees and the mentors, and then I think that we need to not, I mean, I think as events happen and as sort of programs sort of ramp up and ramp down, we will need to focus on those specific mentors, those specific programs more and less often. But I would like to keep us sort of at a higher level than any one program specifically, because that'll, if we focus on just the one, I feel like we're going to be missing some of the stuff.
Cool.
I think one of the things around the closure of each season of code, or I think it's good to call it seasons, celebrating and that pointing to people who have gone through this to help them on their next steps. So I think right now there's a bit of get them through this mentorship season, and then making sure we have these kind of next steps, or even encourage them to come back and mentor cycle.
I think that's exactly right. Right now, and this is part of the reason I sort of reached out to the community to help with this, is because I was unfortunately doing most of this work myself, and there's not enough of my bandwidth in order to do any more than just sort of the unfortunately the bare minimum in some cases. And so this is where I feel like there's two things. I need to figure out how to offload some of the information about what it is that I've been doing, but I'm also hoping to encourage some more of this celebration and helping bring folks in. I think that's really important, and that's going to help sort of bring more to it. I think that right now the CNCF has, I think, 135 or so, 140 projects. I can imagine us having another 40 by the end of the year, and if we keep running in that, the number of projects that we're supporting, and the number of mentors and the number of mentees, it's going to have to be a group effort. I don't think any individual is going to be able to do it. So I'm going to be making an effort to to bring folks up to speed in what it is that has been done and why we're doing it the way that we've been doing it. But I'm also happy for suggestions for new things and new processes, and I'm not precious with anything that I've done so far. So
I know once Jay and Rian get access, I can try to help with some type of dumps and syncs if there's any type of API into the system that you have access to. We do a similar thing that we're focusing on with cloud credits, cloud native credits,
right.
So that the systems where they initially went in are synced over to another one. And also we create basically GitHub-based interactions for that. So yeah.
That would be absolutely amazing.
Automation over process.
And for each program, it's a different process. For Google, we actually have an org level account where we can invite folks via their Google account to Google Summer of X or Season of Y, and that actually goes fairly well, even though we are, as an org, still responsible for making sure things like feedback happens, we are able to invite people individually to do the work themselves. So it's more of an administrative role. Whereas with the Linux, the LFX mentorship platform, it's it was designed for a purpose, and I don't want to cast aspersions, but it builds it, does its job, but it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. And hopefully, automating some of that is possible. I'm hoping that there's going to be an LFX mentorship platform V2 being built at some point. But with the passing of Shubra Khan, that unfortunately has been complicated a little bit. So I don't know, Shubra Khan, sorry. So I think there are still plans to do that, but I'm not sure where they are, at what stage they're at, or anything like that anymore. So there's an idea of a V2 for that, but right now we're kind of stuck dealing with some of the I don't want to call it a kludge, but like we're using Google Forms and stuff to do a lot of the work that I think that the platform itself should do. And that's something we're just going to have to continue to work around, I think.
Looking forward to helping.
Awesome. Cool. Next thing I sort of dropped in there, and probably it's quite a big sort of topic to get into in too much detail at the moment, and Hippie, you might want to feed into this one as well. But we were actually just discussing yesterday amongst the team a little bit about some of the target cohorts and demographics going forward. So as some of you are aware, in the process of developing a mentoring initiative here in New Zealand, alongside some of the wider community. So we're currently engaging with different education providers and businesses and local council to sort of, I guess, look at how we can strategically broaden the net, so to speak, and encourage, so hopefully a wider demographic of peoples to undertake some of these initiatives. And yeah, one of the questions that was sort of raised was about, is there, I guess, any sort of particular or priority sort of cohorts and personas in mind? I know, for the likes of Outreachy, for instance, it's there's a focus on underrepresented groups. Obviously more ethnic diversity and encouraging more women into the space. One of aspects we were talking about was, in addition to encouraging, perhaps people who have had little to no experience in tech in the form of non-code contribution, for instance, was also the idea of engaging with, engaging more with graduates from, tertiary study, from university or polytechnic and the like, and just different sorts of approach that we might have in terms of reaching out to those in general. So my question is was there any sorts of other sort of priority sort of cohorts, or just those for consideration that anyone had anything to speak to on? And Hippie's disappeared, so he's
I don't want to take up all the speaking time, but I think that diversity is a strength, and it really needs to be a focus for what we're doing. And I think I would like to try to find some historical data, even going back as far as I can, to see how well we've done on that. I'd like to I'd like to be able to measure some of these as if we're setting a goal, I'd like them to be measurable and have some historic sort of data around it. I'd also like to try to increase the diversity of the mentors being brought on. And currently, I think that there's a requirement that, at least for the LFX side, the folks who are proposing projects, I think, need to be maintainers, which are generally only a couple of folks on any given project, and they're already some of our most time-strapped folks. And so I'd like to encourage those folks to be like, okay, here's the project, but if we can have like shadow mentors or mentors who are not just the maintainers also be involved, I think that would be a valuable addition as well. Natalie?
Yeah, for every time the Tremor project is involved in the mentorship, in the LFX mentorship area, and we get project submissions, or submissions, should I say, we have a group, and I'm not sure if this is a standard practice, or maybe we could be something that we eventually recommend. But given that the maintainers of Tremor are a small time crunched group, who are also not super diverse, as a good amount of maintainers of big, sometimes bigger projects aren't. And so we've made sure that the moderators and community managers of the project are also actually involved in helping to select mentees, so that the increased diversity of who is actually selecting is there. But on top of that, there's also been a requirement that we've put internally for our project when choosing mentees, that we actually have a diverse selection of mentees as well, as much as possible. Of course, that sometimes can be limited because maybe only one mentee submits for a certain project, so to speak. But we've definitely had groups where we generally try and look at the selection of mentees that we have, of who would be the best fit, and also who needs kind of the mentorship the most based on their submission, and then trying to look at, okay, what is the makeup of this group? Should we be also looking at a diversity element, rather than having, 4 people from the exact same country who are the exact same gender, as an example, and trying to really diversify that way. So that could be something that we also, as a way to help reach some of those targets, that's maybe a smaller amount of effort, just actually putting these ideas of how to actually increase the diversity of the people in your projects that are selected and accepted in different areas. It could be worthwhile.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for that. Happy, did you want to add anything to that as well?
I think it's beautiful, and I wonder if at some point there's not a way to have, and I wouldn't say graduation criteria, but some of the things where we encourage, when we see good behavior, encouraging it in others and making sure others can see it. So kind of holding up the process that Natalie has recommended there, and make sure that others can pick that up, because it's open source isn't just about code. It's about culture. And so when we see good culture, how do we make sure it's readily available to be copied and reused? So I'm encouraged, and I just want us to kind of think on how we can capture and reuse that approach.
Yeah, agree fully. Yeah, that's awesome. As I said, we've been discussing a bit of detail yesterday, so I just wanted to hear from others in the group, and I appreciate that. Last part, I don't have to go into too much detail because I think Nate's pretty much answered that, but around the LFX promotion in New Zealand, I put out just recently that this week will be, some of our team will be representing at annual Careers Expo. It's the biggest one in the region. In fact, if anyone wanted to zoom in and have a look at any time, I can organise that. You're more than welcome to come and check it out. But it was just in terms of what Nate was saying about the possibility of perhaps extending that proposal period. It takes place on the 12th and the 13th here. So if there are any people interested who just like to ensure that they have a bit of lead-in time there to get involved in, and we can sort of support them that side of things if and when they're needed. So that's already base covered. Thank you very much.
Given that is popping up fairly soon. That's the end of this week. Is there anything that you need help with from that this group could potentially provide? Reviews, taking a look at, or is it sort of a little bit late for? I presume you've already bought your signage.
Yeah, no. Absolutely, it'd be yeah, I can share some stuff out. We've just been sort of changing some things around, actually following the meeting you and I had the other day. We've just been trying to sort of optimize things. Our approach to this one has been spreading things really wide. We've been going back and forward strategically in terms of what might be the best way to sort of, gather some interest. But the reality is a lot of people here, they're completely unfamiliar with open source. Things like Linux and LFX and all these sorts of opportunities, and Kubernetes is just not on people's radars. So we have opted to go quite wide and I guess quite shallow, just to sort of just to throw a bunch of things out there and see what sort of happens. But in saying that, especially with the LFX, we do want to offer a little bit more detail. Someone from the marketing team actually shared one of their playbooks that sort of walks through everything in quite a bit of detail. And it's nothing that we'll be sort of having on sort of, overt display. We'll have 8 monitors that'll be sort of cycling with different sort of information, just to give people a sort of, overview. But for those who, who are, like I said, generally interested and will spend that time to sort of ask more questions and things, we will be, making that available as well. So, just sort of tightening some of that stuff up at the moment. I am happy to share some of that with you. It'll be great to get some feedback about what might be some of the most pertinent things to get across. It's that delicate balance between trying to be informational and not overwhelming people with everything that's sort of involved in it. So yeah, absolutely. I've got a meeting with another one of the team today just to go through that a little bit more, and what might be the best. Oh yes, nice. That just came across that yesterday. What might be the best sort of forum to share that stuff in? Do we sort of throw stuff up in the mentoring channel on Slack, or? Is there a preference?
I think that's our collection point for people into mentoring within the CNCF level. Is there a wider net that we have for mentoring conversations, or is it the people in the room and the people that have gone through? I'm just wondering, is this the place, or do we expand it out a bit?
Finding the mute button. I think this is my attempt to expand it. So I think if this is currently the place, again, I'm happy to expand it further if that's where we want to go with the program. But I am hesitant to sort of explode it at this stage.
Thought wasn't necessarily about expanding I'm asking, where are the people gathered? Where can we send message when we're talking about conversations? Is this the place? Is this the only location where these type of conversations are the most beneficial? Do we have other places where overlap might be useful to have a cross-pollinate?
In terms of conversation, there's this space. I've set up a mentorship email list, and we've also got the discussion boards on the GitHub repo, CNCF/mentoring. But I think in terms of the conversations, I'm happy to try to pull more folks in. I think that this is probably the primary channel, and the tag contributor strategy Slack channel. But if there are better channels or different channels, or if we can consolidate channels, I'm happy to do any of those things. At this point, I think we're really very malleable, and I'm not sure that there is much else being discussed that isn't sort of being heard, at least by the folks here. Does that answer your concern, Hippie?
Yeah,
Yep.
That's it.
Okay. So moving on to our next action, our next agenda item. I actually didn't put this on here. I'm not sure which CNCF webinar.
Yeah. So,
Oops.
so the tag is actually participating in a CNCF webinar tomorrow morning on the CNCF. Well, it's not webinar, CNCF live stream thing. I wanted to mention the mentoring working group in there. One of the things that we're going to be emphasizing in here is sort of calls to action for stuff. So what should I throw out for mentoring for things that we're actually really interested in having the CNCF community participate in?
Who's the audience in this webinar?
It's going to be a mix of users and contributors and you know, vendor staff and you know, probably students from IIT.
I would love if there's going to be contributors. I would love. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make it myself, but I'd love somebody to mention that the proposals for LFX term 3 are open. That could be helpful, and then mention to the anybody who's a potential contributor that the Mentee applications are open starting August 15th, and it's a paid. I don't use the term internship because it's not they don't actually become employees, but it is a paid mentorship with a stipend amount based on where they live. So it is paid work, and I always like to make sure that folks realize that.
Okay. Okay, can you drop me what the best link for people to use is? That's actually been one of my problems with LFX, is that it's hard to give somebody a link.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the cleaning up that repo is a thing that I think we should probably look into at some point as a line item. I would probably direct them to. I'm going to send it to your into the tag contributor strategy. Just because I can't cut and paste between the two systems I got for the so it's the GitHub CNCF mentoring LFX mentorship 2022-03 September November link that I just dropped in the contributor strategy Slack channel. That's basically the source of truth for any scheduling, and that's where that folder is where the project ideas are going to be coming in. The next phase, I've currently got project instructions. Once we do, and I should probably add that in fairly soon. We should add application instructions as well to this page to keep that as the sort of central piece for where things are going to be.
Okay.
The other thing that will happen with this particular page, as the project ideas are approved, they will get moved to this README page, and will include a link to the LFX mentorship program once it's been added there too. So for anything for next semester, this is probably the page to be.
Okay. But my other question is, if we're going to ask people to participate in the working group, so this would be kind of a different group of people.
Yeah.
Like, what would be the first thing that we would ask for?
It's a very good question. And that goes back to me figuring out how to delegate some of the work that I've been doing.
Or do new stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I went over it, bro.
Pardon me. It's within the stuff that I'm interested in doing in mentoring, is trying to spin up a place for people to work together and learn. When they're learning how to mentor immediately. And one of those things is trying to use things either like GitHub workspaces, or even the coder.com, I believe, has Coder to spin up underneath to give us VS Code inside of a cluster, so that we could have a click to create a mentoring environment that checks out the code, so that we kind of have a workflow for mentoring. I mean, and have it not need to have software installed on their machines, so that going through that process of and so this piece of software that does not yet exist, being built upon Coder and these other pieces to bring up. I call it pairing, but it's mentoring. It's the kind of thing that it's not exactly, but it's trying to work together on things. And you're talking about new things, Josh, and I'm trying to find a way to have a space where we're talking about and trying new things and inviting others to participate in that. I think the ask is, if there are people interested in working on a cloud native mentoring and pairing environment, come show up.
Are you referring to the code that Caleb showed me at the coupon?
I think it's going to be based on that. When we've looked at it, having people dig into Emacs and the beautifulness of org mode and teammate is a deep knowledge, and we're trying to basically take what we've learned from that process of educating people to educate others in this super deep knowledge. How do we crank that back up to you just need the web, and it's stuff that more people are familiar with, like VS Code, and then underneath it there's an Ingress working Kubernetes cluster, so that there's just follow these steps and it's up and working, hit save, and it creates a PR.
Sounds, if I can interject, I feel like there's an LFX mentorship proposal.
I guess that's where this fits better, but I guess if I get it out tonight, make sure it's available for Josh to mention tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'll get right on that.
Just looking at the time, we're at about 3 minutes to 2. Do you feel you have enough to share tomorrow, Josh?
Yeah. And the next agenda item was also mine, which was I was actually talking to a potential mentee for another thing, and he brought up being involved in the CNCF students group, which wasn't a thing I'd ever heard of before.
I haven't heard that either.
And if this is an actual thing, then it feels like a group we should be reaching out to for mentees.
I agree. And second your confusion, I'm not sure that I have heard of CNCF students group either. So we've got
it was during an interview, so
yeah.
It was specifically an Indian contributor, so
Okay.
I almost, so it's possible that this would be a regional thing, but I'd never heard of it before.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm just doing a quick search and whatnot, and I'm seeing stuff.
Oh wait, no, there's a thing. There is a thing. It's apparently kind of dead, but it was a thing for a few years.
Oh,
There.
interesting. That might be why.
And there
missed it.
should still be a subscriber base there, which then feels like a good target for Mentee stuff that we could be finding out who owns that, and therefore who has control of that.
Yeah. April. Yeah, let me see what I can
Yeah.
find out.
I mean, this appears to be students. Kind of a mix of students as in, you know, people who are student age who are, you know, somehow interested. And at the same time, people who are learning cloud native technologies
Yeah. I
who
wonder if
could
this
be
fits in
any
with
age.
I wonder if this fits in with some of our meetup type stuff too.
Mhm.
That might explain that. So it may not be like an official like program, but just a collection of folks. Take a look. I'll ask around and see what I can find out.
Yeah.
There's also the hash students Slack channel in the CNCF Slack that we might want to take advantage of. That's a terrible term to make to engage with. So again, just looking at the time, we are. Oh, sorry, Natalie just commented. Natalie says some of the organizers listed toward the end are Kubernetes folks who work alongside. Happy to reach out and see if there's more info. Thank you. That would be excellent. I appreciate that. And so again, just a bit of a recap. I'm not going to be here next meeting, so maybe Jay, you can take care of hosting. Josh and I will figure out what Zoom link, and I will update the calendar invite accordingly, as well as update this document here. And just lightning round, is there anything that anybody would like to bring up before we conclude? Oh, thank you, Hippie. I appreciate that. That would be great.
Awesome. That's all from me. That's
Okay.
awesome.
Thank you all so very much. I'm so excited that we're here and we're doing this. This is fantastic. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Awesome.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks for being you.
Yeah.
Bye.